In March 1937, Benito Mussolini rode into the Libyan desert, accepted a golden sword from a Berber chief, and was proclaimed protector of Islam.
Il Duce and the Sword of Islam. He receives it from the admiring tribes of Libya and accepts it in the name of Fascist and Christian Italy. He raises it on high. The Muslim cavalry charges past, and the Italians throw flames.
The sword was brand new. It had been ordered from a Florentine workshop. The photographs were carefully staged. In at least one famous version, the groom holding the horse was removed so the Duce would appear to control the animal alone. Today, we examine the Sword of Islam ceremony as a pure case study in how ideology, power, and self-presentation actually work, and what it reveals about the differences between a real standard and a temporary performance. On March 18th, 1937, outside Tripoli, at the oasis of Bergara, Mussolini received the Sword of Islam from Yusuf Kirbisk, a pro-Italian Berber notable. The presentation was made in the name of Libyan Muslim soldiers and notables. Mussolini was acclaimed protector of Islam. He then entered Tripoli at the head of roughly 2,600 cavalry amid cannon salutes. In his speech, he declared that Fascist Italy would guarantee the Muslim populations of Libya and Ethiopia peace, justice, well-being, and respect for the laws of the Prophet, and that Italy wished to show sympathy to Islam and Muslims worldwide. You can read the full text of the speech here. The sword itself was not an ancient relic. It was a modern ceremonial piece with arabesque decoration and gold fittings, commissioned from the Florentine firm of Bicciani e Baracci on Mussolini's order.
He made a tour of Libya when he paid a state visit to Tripoli. A spectacular torchlight
This was the
procession
climax
part
of
the
a
program
deliberate
arranged to
mid-1930s shift in fascist colonial policy. After the brutal pacification of Cyrenaica, the regime under Governor Italo Balbo moved toward visible
Greece. Arabs
gestures:
and Muslims from all
mosque
parts gathered to acclaim Il
reconstruction
Duce.
and
Presented
restoration,
him with the sword of the
Quranic
Prophet.
schools,
But as Senior Mussolini
facilities
used
for
to be a
Mecca
journalist,
pilgrims,
he felt
and
no
a
doubt
high
the
school
pen
in
was
Islamic
mightier,
culture
as well
in
as a lot
Tripoli.
less awkward.
Local populations were sometimes
Military
described
games were
as
the climax of the
Italian
entertainment,
Muslims
charging
of the
troops and tanks,
foreshore.
but showing a
Radio
dictator how
Barry
to speak vows
broadcast
like carrying
in
two
Arabic.
weapons.
The Ethiopian was also framed in some propaganda as beneficial to Muslim interests. The goal was internal stabilization of the colony and external competition with Britain and France for influence in the Muslim world. The Sword of Islam ceremony turned that policy into high theater. The mechanism of performance, let's look at the elements. A specifically manufactured symbol, the sword. A carefully staged public ritual. Retouched photography to perfect the heroic image. A proclaimed identity, protector of Islam, that served immediate political needs. A later quiet abandonment of the posture when strategic priorities shifted. The sword was stored at Rocca della Caminate and effectively disappeared from active political use. The elaborate identity proved temporary. This is the classic pattern of power. Create a public doctrine or identity when useful. Perform it with the maximum ceremony, then revise or shelve it when it is no longer convenient, while maintaining the appearance of continuity. Connection to a creative practice, the same structure appears on a personal scale in creative life. A creator often constructs a public standard, a personal doctrine of artistic integrity, focused practice, originality, or philosophical consistency. When that standard is useful for identity or audience, it is performed with conviction. When it becomes costly or inconvenient, it is quietly softened, ignored, or replaced. The original principle is rarely formally rejected, it is simply no longer enforced. The Sword of Islam episode shows the mechanism in pure form: the manufactured symbol, the theatrical proclamation, the gap between claimed role and actual record, and the eventual quiet setting aside of the entire posture. A serious creative practice refuses that move. It treats standards as binding rather than theatrical. When a standard becomes difficult, the honest options remain only two: remain committed to it, or openly revise it and accept the new one. Silent abandonment turns principle into costume. Mussolini raised the Sword of Islam because it served power in 1937. When it no longer served, the performance ended. The useful lesson is simple: watch the gap between the standards you proclaim and the ones that you actually govern your daily decisions. That gap is where integrity is either kept or lost. Primary speech text, key historical images, newsreel footage. If this is the kind of practical examination of ideology, power, and personal standards is useful to you, consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.